This will be an historic storm when all is said and done. We do see heavy rain, and we are seeing more rain than most areas see in the entire month of April.
Good morning and welcome to Boston, Massachusetts, where a fierce nor'easter threatens the 111th running of the Boston Marathon. It is Monday, April 16th, 2007, and today's weather forecast is bleak. The National Weather Service has issued a winter storm warning, with heavy rain and gusty wind predicted throughout the region. The slow-moving storm is now hanging over Boston. The city's skyline is hidden under thick clouds, and a stiff 30-mile-per-hour wind buffets the harbor. Race officials have only just this morning made their final decision to hold the marathon. At Copley Square, workers are scrambling to set up the finish area, where the rain and cold make even the most routine tasks difficult. At the finish line, clocks and timing systems are being installed and tested. The media huddle beneath the photo bridge canopy, where the weather is today's top story. Out in Hopkinton, ominous clouds flow in from the east, and a small river runs down Main Street. Volunteers work to set up pace corrals, while others fill countless cups with water. Over at Hopkinton High School, busloads of runners are beginning to arrive from Boston. The school's athletic fields serve as a staging area for the more than 20,000 participants expected for today's race. At this point, runners are doing everything they can to stay warm and dry. Unfortunately, the ground is soaked from the 5+ inches of rain that fell over the weekend. 2 more inches are predicted today. But it will certainly take more than rain and wind and cold to stop these dedicated athletes. Boston remains the only major marathon that requires participants to qualify. Runners must prove their ability to finish a certified marathon course within established time standards based on age. For example, a 54-year-old male must be able to run a marathon in less than 3 hours and 35 minutes. That requires serious dedication, talent, and training. Now, about an hour before the start, runners are beginning to walk toward the corrals. Up at the starting line, the wheelchair racers are already lining up. And at 9:25 a.m., they're off and rolling. For safety reasons, the wheelchair start is controlled over the first half-mile downhill. Ernst van Dijk of South Africa, the 6-time champion, looks calm and collected. Van Dijk is on the point as they break away, but he's quickly overtaken by Masazumi Sojima of Japan. Back at the start, the women's professionals have come out on the street to loosen up. The women's elite race will begin at 9:35 a.m., 25 minutes ahead of the elite men and the first wave. Among the notables today are Yelena Prokopchuka wearing bib number 2, Rita Jeptu, the returning champion, bib number 1, and Dina Castor, America's top female runner, wearing bib number 3. And with only seconds to go, the women are poised to start. With the sound of the gun, they're off and running. The Boston Marathon is hosting the 2007 USA Women's Marathon Championship in conjunction with today's elite women's race. More than 50 of these athletes will compete for a separate purse awarded to the top U.S. women's finishers. Less than a mile in, Yelena Prokopchuka, number 2 of Latvia, has taken the lead, followed closely by Rita Jeptu and others. The rain is falling harder now, and the wind, which had died down some, is hitting them directly in the face. Although these conditions are less than ideal, everyone must be relieved that it isn't much worse. After only 2 miles, the women's lead pack has diminished to 9 competitors, with Prokopchuka, Jeptu, and Castor leading the way. Back in Hopkinton, the men's professionals are just emerging from the church to loosen up. Each is wrapped in a clear plastic poncho to help them keep warm and dry for as long as possible. As the men jog up and down Main Street, the rain continues to fall steadily. Fortunately, the temperature has already risen into the high 40s, much warmer than predicted. Just seconds to go now. And they're off. The 111th Boston Marathon is officially underway. With the leaders streaking down the first hill, the field is flowing out of the corrals and onto the course. The first wave, wearing blue bibs, is made up of the 10,000 fastest qualifiers. This two-wave system was first implemented last year to minimize the crowding on the narrow road between Hopkinton and Ashland. Everyone looks well prepared for the adverse weather ahead. Most expect the course to be difficult, especially if the wind kicks up for long stretches. Hell's Alley and the Newton Hills are obstacles enough on the best of days, but those challenges are still miles away. These runners are only just beginning this 26.2-mile journey to Boston. In spite of the blustery headwind, Josephat Onjeri number 54 and Jared Nyamboki number 42 have charged out in front. It is absurd to think that either of these guys could sustain this pace all the way to Boston. Although, to be fair, we should note here that Onjeri did win the Detroit Free Press Marathon, and these harsh conditions could be the wild card today. Approaching 10 kilometers, the women's lead has not changed. Yelena Prokopchuka, the two-time New York City Marathon champion and last year's Boston runner-up, has set the pace from the start. Prokopchuka is currently leading in the inaugural World Marathon Majors competition and stands to earn $500,000 if she can hold her lead through the end of this year. Just behind Prokopchuka is number 8 Alice Chelangat of Kenya, winner of the 2006 San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon. The women reached 10 kilometers in 34:51. Not bad considering this gusty headwind. Just after the 10K Elite Water Station, the defending champion Rita Jeptu has assumed the lead. She's probably unhappy with the subdued pace. Back with the men, Onjeri and Nyamboki continue with their runaway lead, now several hundred meters ahead of the pack. At 5 kilometers, the chase pack is open and loose. Robert CHERUIYOT, wearing number 1, which designates the defending champion, has emerged in the front. At this point, it's impossible to say who will challenge CHERUIYOT for the title and the $100,000 first place prize. Approaching NATICK, Yelena Prokopchuka is back in front, perhaps reluctantly in this biting wind. At 15 kilometers, the women's pack is down to 8. Meanwhile, the men's pack still comprises at least 30 contenders as they approach 10 kilometers. Turning in a 32-34 split, the men are on a very sluggish pace. At this point, no one is willing to take charge. Back in Hopkinton, more than 10,000 age group qualifiers are just underway with the second wave at 10:30 a.m. In spite of these dreary conditions, 20,638 athletes will cross the starting line this morning. The Boston Marathon continues to be the world's premier event in long-distance road racing. and these runners are as eager as ever to add their name to history by finishing the 111th Boston Marathon. As the longest-running marathon in the world, Boston has had its share of firsts. But today, the race establishes a new record that is literally out of this world. Along with the 20,000-plus running on terra firma, astronaut Suni Williams will run the Boston Marathon in zero gravity aboard the International Space Station. Williams qualified for the marathon last year, but with her space mission extended, race officials agreed that she could run the marathon in orbit. Now heading into Natick, Untitled and Nyamboki have opened a 2-minute lead on the others. This is a very unusual tactic, running ahead this far, this early, and one that is unlikely to succeed here in Boston. With the entire race now in progress, the first wave is beginning to arrive in Framingham, where the wind and rain have let up some. Before long, thousands of runners are surging past the 10K on Waverly Street. The 10K split is an early barometer of marathon performance. It is important for runners to control their pace here, but this can be difficult since this course is mostly downhill through the first half of the race. Just beyond the 10K, runners pass the old Framingham Railroad Depot. Here, wet and soggy shoes are a concern, as blisters can form easily in these conditions. Apart from avoiding puddles, there's not much runners can do except keep going. Near 15 kilometers, the men's pack is down to about 20 competitors. Meanwhile, the women's leaders are making their way toward Wellesley, where the lead has been switching between Jeptu, CHERUIYOT, and Prokopchuka. But here near Wellesley College, Prokopchuka has taken the point once again. In Boston, Masazumi Sojima of Japan is about to win the men's wheelchair race, defeating 6-time champion Ernst van Dijk with a time of 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 16 seconds. Returning to Natick, the men continue to run at a lethargic pace, just waiting for someone to open things up. Back at Lake CHERUIYOT, the field has already made its way to 15 kilometers. Although the bleak forecast has caused a lower than normal turnout of spectators, it certainly hasn't dampened the spirits of these runners. Everyone looks upbeat and focused on the race. Runners are undoubtedly relieved by this unexpected lull in the storm. In Natick Center, the rain has mostly stopped now, but dark clouds threaten to open again, and the wind continues to blow at a decent clip. Earlier, the women's leaders hit the half marathon split at 1 hour, 17 minutes, 13 seconds. Now running through Wellesley Hills, Prokopchuka has stepped up the pace. And the first casualty is Dina Castor, as the American hopeful has surprisingly fallen behind. With a sullen look, Castor wonders whether this race is over for her. Crossing into Newton, Prokopchuka and Jeptu are joined by Lydia Grigorieva, number 6 of Russia, and Medai Perez, number 4 of Mexico. Quickly, we go to Boston, where WAKAKO TSUCHIDA of Japan is about to win the women's wheelchair race with the time of 1:53:30. Approaching the half marathon, the men's pack is down to about a dozen challengers. With a half marathon split of 1:08:45, Robert Cheruiyot is looking for some action. After peeling off their outer shirts, it looks like these guys are ready to roll. Whereas the duo of Untitled and Nyamboki is now running visibly slower here in Wellesley Hills. And speaking of hills, the women's leaders are just about to climb through Newton, where Rita Jeptu has now fallen behind. It's now Prokopchuka number 2, followed by Grigorieva number 6 and Perez number 4. At 30K, the trio is in sync, stride for stride. Prokopchuka strips off another layer. She may be contemplating a move. Returning to Wellesley College, the field is greeted by hundreds of young women who have braved the weather to show their passion for the athletes. This is the famous Scream Tunnel, a manic high point for most runners. Farther ahead, thousands are pouring into Wellesley along Central Street. Here at the halfway point, most runners will try to gauge their pace. With the wind and hills looming ahead, an extra gear will be needed for those determined to succeed by finishing within their projected time. Approaching Newton, the men's race is about to take shape. Namboki is breaking away from Onjeri, or just as likely, Onjeri has run out of gas. The chase pack, led almost continuously by defending champion Robert CHERUIYOT, has been closing in on these pretenders since the half marathon. Namboki is alone now, entering Hell's Alley, a mile-long stretch that climbs nearly 100 feet. Rounding the country club, Namboki must be feeling the heat as the pack moves in for the kill. After the firehouse turn on Commonwealth Avenue, Namboki looks over his shoulder and straight into the cold face of reality. Ahead, the women are approaching Heartbreak Hill. The trio is held together, but now Meday Perez, number 4 of Mexico, has taken the lead. Perez is really stepping on it here at Boston College, but Prokopchuka and Grigorieva managed to hang on. Perez, whose goal is to finish in the top 3, is looking very determined at this point. At Cleveland Circle, Prokopchuka has asserted herself once again and resumed the lead. Back with the men, Namboki has dropped out. At 30 kilometers, the pack is tight with about 15 competitors. Up in front, Robert CHERUIYOT shares a drink with his older brother, Stephen Biwott, number 12. Now Biwott is testing the pack as they pass Newton City Hall. Biwott is definitely setting a new tempo at this point. The others are responding, and the pack holds together. This is typically where the race really gets going, at 20 miles, right at the foot of Heartbreak Hill. Yes, as expected here, James Kwambai, number 11 of Kenya, has jumped out in front and is hauling it up the hill. Kwambai won the Beijing Marathon last October in 2 hours and 10 minutes 36, so he's a legitimate threat. CHERUIYOT is keeping it close, however, followed by number 7 Stephen Kiagora, number 2 Ben Mayo, and others. Passing Boston College, CHERUIYOT has come up alongside Kwambai. So with the men's and women's professional races shaping up, let's look in on the field. With 30 kilometers behind them, these runners look great. But having just come through Hell's Alley, the Newton Hills pose a significant challenge. Just beyond 30K, the course passes Newton City Hall, where the wind is beginning to pick up again. In passing this location near the foot of Heartbreak Hill, runners pay homage to the great Johnny Kelly, who ran the Boston Marathon a record 62 times. Earlier, the women's leaders ran together along Beacon Street. In Brookline, it's Lydia Grigorieva, number 6 of Russia, with a slight lead. Grigorieva is a serious threat here, having set the course record in Los Angeles last year. Now at 40K, she's making her move. With 2 miles to go, Grigorieva is opening up a winning margin and running away with it. On Commonwealth Avenue, she's accelerating. Prokopchuka and Perez are fading. Under Massachusetts Avenue, Lydia Grigorieva is unstoppable. She makes the turn onto Hereford Street. And now on to Boylston. The 33-year-old Russian Lydia Grigorieva is going to win the 2007 Boston Marathon. She grabs a Russian flag and carries it to victory in 2 hours, 29 minutes, and 18 seconds. Yelena Prokopchuka of Latvia finishes second, and Medai Perez of Mexico takes third. And here just a few moments later, Dina Castor finishes a disappointing fifth in 2:35.09, but wins the 2007 USA Women's Marathon Championship. With the women's race concluded, let's go back to the men's leaders, who are now running along Beacon Street in Brookline. At 23 miles, it's Kenyan's Robert Cheriot number 1, with James Kwambai number 11 and Stephen Kiagora number 7 in pursuit. At Coolidge Corner, it's Kwambai and Cheriot, and Cheriot appears to be sizing things up for a move. And there, at 40K, Cheriot is breaking away. Kwambai seems reserved, perhaps content with second place. Cheriot streaks into Kenmore Square, where he's opened a huge lead. The 28-year-old Kenyan won here first in 2003, and again last year, setting a new course record of 2:07.14. Since then, Cheriot has also won the Chicago Marathon, where he was injured in a horrific fall at the finish line. He currently leads the World Marathon Majors competition with 50 points. With a 25-point win here today, he can virtually bank the $500,000 prize. Emerging from the Mass Ave underpass, Cheriot checks his watch and glances back at Kwambai, a full 12 seconds behind. From Commonwealth Avenue, he makes the turn onto Hereford Street. On Boylston, Cheriot can see the finish line ahead. 1, 2, 3, we can see them all coming now. Robert Cheriot of Kenya will win his third Boston Marathon in 5 years, breaking the tape in 2 hours, 14 minutes, 13 seconds. James Kwambai finishes in second place, with Stephen Kiagora in third. With the champions crowned, let's return to the 25-mile mark, where spectators are finally out on the course, shouting encouragement to the athletes. Across the Mass Pike in Kenmore Square, the famous Sitco sign signals runners have just 1 mile to go. The John Hancock Tower, home of the Boston Marathon's major sponsor, comes into view on the skyline. Runners dive beneath the Massachusetts Avenue underpass and quickly emerge back onto Commonwealth Avenue. At Hereford Street, runners make their way toward the Heinz Convention Center on Boylston. Here, in spite of the forecast, thousands of spectators have turned out to welcome finishers. With the blue and gold banners in sight, runners begin to celebrate. This is it, the glorious end. Congratulations, you have finished the 2007 Boston Marathon. $20,348 runners will officially finish the 111th Boston Marathon. They've run 26.2 miles from the start in Hopkinton, through Ashland, Framingham, Natick, Wellesley, Newton, and Brookline, and finally ending right here in Boston's historic Back Bay. Beyond the finish line, every runner is provided with water to quench their thirst, foil sheets to regulate body temperature, and volunteers to unlay shoes and remove timing chips. Everyone receives the official Finisher's Medal, an award to be cherished for a lifetime. The procession continues all the way down to Berkeley Street, where runners meet up with family and friends. Thousands will continue to stream across the finish line until 4:45 p.m. when it officially closes. Although Robert Cheriot and Lydia Grigorieva are the official champions, every finisher is a winner in Boston. The 111th Boston Marathon is in the books, and so are you. Congratulations.